I fear your promise of optimism, Frank, was also a sort of facetiousness.
I hope you got the joke.
Our next speaker is Dr. Mira Tzoreff, who is a research fellow at the Moshe Dayan Center, a lecturer in the Department of Middle Eastern and African History, and a co-chair of the Egypt Forum at the Moshe Dayan Center. Dr.Tzoreff's research deals with social and cultural history of Egypt in the modern period. Her most recent publication appeared in a special issue of the Hebrew language journal, The New East, and it's titled The Silent Revolution, Saudi Women Lead Change from Within. Today, Dr. Tzoreff will be speaking about the Copts of Egypt after the Arab Spring, from a new Dhimmi to fully fledged citizens, ? Dr. Tzoreff.
Thank you, Brandon. I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me to take part in this conference. Alf Mabruk to you, Professor Banjo, for your new book. For me personally, you are the Kurdish issue. All of what I know about this topic is from you. So thank you very much. Well, we love you. We are with you, President. Long live Egypt, shouted Copts, while President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, together with Patriarch Tawadros II, walked in January 6, 2018, into the new cathedral during the Coptic Christmas ceremony. We too love you. We are one family, responded President al-Sisi, who is the first Egyptian president to have personally taken part in a Coptic Christmas ceremony, thereby legitimizing a visit of a Muslim president in a Christian place of worship. Moreover, it was the president himself who initiated the construction of the new cathedral, and it was he who also sponsored it with 100,000 Egyptian pounds. According to official sources, this year, the Ministry of Interior deployed 230,000 security staff in order to secure the peaceful Christmas ceremonies in churches throughout the country to prevent violent attacks by Muslim extremists. The churches, collaborating with the army and the police, had to install surveillance cameras, electronic gates, as well as setting up control systems. Churches in Cairo looked like fortresses because of these enormous security measures. These steps certainly served President al-Sisi in overcoming the harsh criticism of those who accused the regime of not exerting enough efforts in safeguarding and protecting the Christians in Egypt, who certainly deserve to be treated as equal citizens. It wasn't the only gesture of al-Sisi's regime towards the Copts. In addition to that, the president initiated legal changes as well. For example, on September 2016, the Egyptian parliament enacted a law regulating the construction and renovation of churches, delegating authority to approve requests of church building and renovation permits to governors rather than to the president as was required previously. However, it should be noted that according to the new law, the number of new churches depends both on the size of the Christian community in the certain area and its needs. On May 2019, the Egyptian cabinet also legalized the status of 165 active and unlicensed churches and church service buildings. Furthermore, on August 2018, al-Sisi appointed Manal Awad Mikhail, first Coptic woman, as the governor of the province of Damietta. Mikhail, previously vice governor of Giza, is the first non-Muslim to hold such a prestigious post, so far exclusively assigned to Muslim males. Mikhail's appointment was part of the new presidential appointments concerned 22 of the 27 governorates into which the country is subdivided. Moreover, Egypt's current parliament has an unprecedented representation of minority groups, 36 Christians out of 596 total members, an improvement in comparison to the past parliaments. Additionally, two-thirds, 24 members of the Christian parliamentarians were elected due to Egypt's first religiously based quota system. Are these steps taken by President Sisi really upgraded the status of the Copts in Egypt? The Coptic minority in Egypt that constitutes 10% of Egypt's population suffers from systematic political, social, and religious discrimination for decades. The modern history of the Copts, however, is characterized by an ongoing effort of the community's leadership to achieve political, social, and cultural integration with the Muslim majority, which in times came at the expense of blurring their own cultural and linguistic particularism. Contrary to other minorities in the Middle East, the Copts never had any territorial or political ambitions that might threaten the Muslim majority, nor endanger the national unity, wahda wataniya, or the territorial integrity of the Egyptian state. Quite the opposite. The modern history of Egypt clearly shows that the Copts played a major part in both Egypt's modernization project during the long 19th century, as well as in the struggle for independence in the Egyptian national movement, especially in the 1919 revolution, which its slogan was "the Copts and the Muslims, one and, al-Akbat wal-Muslimun id wahda." Thus, at the end of World War I, many Copts joined the Wafd Party, whose platform was based on national unity and equality for all Egyptian citizens, and its slogan was, religion belongs to God, the fatherland to all citizens. Ad-din lillah wal-watan il-jami. When asked about the Wafd's attitude towards members of various religious faiths, Saad Zarlul, the mythological leader of the Egyptian national movement and the Wafd party, replied, and I quote, "Equal duties and equal rights for all." Indeed, when Zarlul was active in the political arena between the years 1922 to 1927, he adopted an inclusive patriotism. Thus, Copts held prominent ministerial positions, including Minister of Foreign Affairs, Communication, Transportation, and Finance. However, this formative period was the exception that proves the rule, as since then, the Copts suffer from discrimination in all levels. Their representation in government institutions is marginal. They have no representation at all in the army and in the police. They are not represented at all neither in the intelligence nor in the diplomatic service, except of Butrus Rali, who served as Vice Foreign Minister and Secretary General of the United Nations between 1992 to 1996. The representation in courts as well as in the institution of higher education is negligible as well. Needless to say that there is no Coptic university in Egypt and that the Coptic language and history were never taught in any high school or university. But since the 1970s, this discrimination has been followed and accompanied by constant acts of violence toward the Coptic community. Under Hosni Mubarak, Egypt experienced a rise in sectarian incidents. Violent attacks against Copts became a common phenomenon. These attacks reached a peak on New Year's Eve, January 2011, when a suicide bombing was carried out at the Al-Qadissim Church in Alexandria. The bombing left 21 dead and nearly 100 wounded. On June 2016, a 70-year-old Christian woman was beaten and dragged naked in the streets of Minya by a mob because her son was suspected of having an affair with a Muslim woman. These are only two examples out of so many. Egyptian governments choose to ignore the profound social and cultural reasons for sectarian violence and refrained from applying effective measures in order to protect the Copts. Those responsible were not taken to court. Moreover, religious personae as well as security officials who dealt with the sectarian incidents prevented the development of an open, critical public discourse and blocked any initiative of public institutions or NGOs to form solutions that would prevent the next sectarian act of violence. The regime preferred to present these acts as a plot, muamara, of the internal enemies harming Egyptian unity. Nowadays, these ultimate enemies are first and foremost the Muslim Brotherhood, the Salafists, and the Islamic State. Instead of formulating an overall solution to this painful issue, the regime chose and still chooses to solve the religious tension between Copts and Muslims through reconciliation gatherings and symbolic gestures. Hosni Mubarak, for example, called the victims of the church massacre martyrs, shuhada, a term officially reserved for Muslims only. In schools and universities, students stood in a moment of silence in memory of those who were killed. Sheikh Al-Azhar paid a condolence visit to the Patriarch Shenouda III, demonstrating solidarity and showing unity between Copts and Muslims. Demonstrators carried slogans such as, "With my heart and soul, I will defend the cross," and "We are all Copts." But these human gestures didn't solve the problem. The Copts played also an active part in the Arab Spring Revolution that broke out on January 25, 2011. The social harmony between Muslims and Christians in Tahrir Square was manifested through slogans such as the unity of the cross and the crescent, and the images of both Christian and Muslim martyrs. More significant than that was the organization of young Copts who presented a new vision which focused on diversity, namely equality through the expression of a distinctive Coptic identity. However, the opportunity to challenge the paradigm of national unity to include diversity of identities and equal rights wasn't realized. The success of the Muslim Brotherhood following the 2012 parliamentary elections, along with the election of Mohamed Morsi to presidency, intensified the sectarian tensions as the elected president started a rapid process of theocratization and Islamization, which harshly challenged the vision of Egypt as a civil state. The most prominent expression of this process was the new constitution, which granted religious figures a larger part in interpreting the principles of Sharia. The concept of citizenship, with its reference to equality regardless of religious affiliation, which was part of the young Copts' vision, was absent from this constitution. The Islamization of public spaces, cultural institutions, and mass media led more than 100,000 young Copts to immigrate from Egypt, mainly to Georgia, but also to the Netherlands, Belgium, Canada, and Australia. The rise of Abd el-Fattah al-Sisi and the intensification of terrorist attacks against the Copts increased the use of the traditional national unity discourse. Even the critical discourse of the authoritarian pattern of government does not refer to the rights of the Copts as a minority, as such a discourse is conceived as expressing particularist interests that might damage the overall struggle for democracy in Egypt. I'm finishing. President al-Sisi adopted the late Coptic intellectual Milad Hanna's collective identity, which has 7 layers: Pharaonic, Hellenistic, Coptic, Islamic, Arabic, Mediterranean, and African. But these 7 layers were only instrumental and not translated into real, practical rights. So the Copts still remained trapped between the two discourses and are expected to shelve their particular demands and identity for the sake of national unity and stability. Thank you.